Welcome to the Logistics Point interviews. Today I'm joined by Peter Nido from Segura Systems, the founder and the president, and we're talking about ethical supply chains. Peter, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Nick. It's a pleasure.
I just said ethical supply chains, and I think the obvious question is, how should we define an ethical supply chain, and how do we actually even create it?
For me, businesses should focus in three key areas. The first one of those, and you may have heard this many times before, is those three areas being people, planet, profit. And the third one is always a bit contentious, the profit one, but I will explain myself a little bit on that one. But first of all, it's a supply chain where throughout the layers of the supply chain and everybody that's supplying the business, the people that are involved and doing the work in that are looked after and working in good conditions and not exploited. And we see this all over the world. Even today there are millions, some reports as much as 45 million bonded labor and slave labor around the world. And that can't be a part of an ethical supply chain. So weeding out those practices throughout the layers is important. We only have one planet, so it's got to be a supply chain that is looking after the planet. And if it's not doing good to the planet, at least it's doing no harm. And I don't think there are many businesses out there that could say that about their supply chain. So that's really important. And then thirdly, profit is still important, because whilst you take care of your people and look after your supply chains ethically and sustainably, the businesses still do need to make some money, or else it doesn't become a sustainable business. So it's those kind of three big indicators, often referred to as the triple bottom line, that are really important. The how do we create them side is the much more difficult question to answer. And I think that, for any business, they've got to get a grip on what's going on in their supply chain. Now, for the industry in which Segura deals in, the fashion and textiles industry, supply chains can be many layers and very complicated. In terms of a small client of Segura may have 500 tier one suppliers, garment manufacturers. And that's just the start of it, because then they've got usually 15, 20, 30 suppliers of components and assets that they need to order from in order to make garments. And then those suppliers usually have a fairly sizable number. So before you know it, you can go from 500 to 5,000 suppliers in a supply chain. And the difficulty of that is uncovering who's supplying whom. So in most cases, a business will know their primary suppliers reasonably well. And I think in our industry, most are working hard to make sure that those primary suppliers are working in good conditions, looking after their people and the planet. But it's when you get below that into the tier two, what we call tier two and below, where it gets a bit murkier and a bit less understood. And so businesses that want to create really ethical supply chains, they've got to know where the materials that are going into the products that they produce and the services provided, they've got to know where they're coming from. And I have to say, today, most people don't.
Do you think that it will take us a long time for businesses to get to a point where they know why we should be ethical and sustainable?
It's a journey, and it will take a fair amount of time. I think, in terms of the kind of help and assistance that's out there, they could certainly accelerate that. But yes, people have got to take a phrase that I've often used and coined from other people is grasp the nettle. It's hard work, it's painful, but if they don't make a start and they don't deal with these difficult problems, they'll just get bigger. And I think the consumers in this world, the governments are starting to do some work as well, in order to put pressure on businesses to make sure they are working hard in this area and dealing with the issues as best they can.
Hey there, thank you for watching. We will continue with the interview shortly. But before that, if you like what you see, don't forget to give us a like, comment, and you can also subscribe to our newsletters both on LinkedIn and on our website to learn more from the logistics and supply chain industry. And now, let's get back.
And just to pick up on one of the words that you said, which is consumers, how important it is for consumers, specifically in fashion. It's very easy for us to go to a store and pick something for $1 or £1 or €1. How important is the role of consumers in all of this?
Massively important. And, from a business's point of view, they're there to meet the demands of their customers. And at the moment, and I was reading some statistics on this just the other day, the under 30s, when they buy garments and fashion, their number one priority is the look and feel and the price. Those are really, really important. The next one is how it's produced, how ethically it's produced, what's its impact on the planet. And that's risen over the years. It was very much down the list. And I see that trend continuing, that, as the environmental issues and sustainability issues become more and more front of mind and front and center in the world, people understanding and looking at things and thinking, how has this garment been produced? But like in other industries, how has my car been produced? My house, all of these big items, have they been produced in a way that's impacted the planet least or neutrally, or even had a positive impact? And I think more and more people are thinking that way. And the more that they do, the more pressure businesses will be under to deliver to their needs if they vote with their feet.
What is the role of technology in all of this?
I think technology has a massive part to play, because you cannot create ethical supply chains by manual processes. Just as I mentioned at the beginning, a small customer for Segura will bloat to about 5,000 locations. So, managing that with people is in my view, it's impossible. But even if you could, you would have to employ thousands to do it. So I think technology bringing that visibility and transparency is really, really important. And, we see Segura very much as the hub of that, of tracking the orders through up and down the supply chain, in order for our clients to see what's going on and who's actually in their ecosystem. And then there are many, many other players that are doing brilliant things with technology. We've got providers that are bringing in technology that starts at raw materials and using blockchain can track those materials through to the final garments. And they very much work in tandem with a system like Segura. We have a handshake at a point so that we can track that through. And I think all of these systems that bring visibility, transparency, but make it easier for retailers to adopt, I think will play a huge part. We've got to automate as much of this as we can.
And one of the things when we talk about technology and automation is how hard is it actually to start, and where do you even start from? What are the first steps?
It can seem, and I've seen people and talked to people in this situation where the problem just seems too large, So instead of getting on with what they can control, often they're in that kind of paralysis stage of just being really scared about the size of the problem. But I think help is out there, and there's lots and lots more help, even in the last couple of years, that's come about. And I think what I would do, there's organizations, yes, Segura produces quite a lot of information and helpful tips and hints about where to start and how to start to get a grip of supply chains. But also, look out at their friends and colleagues that are working in other organizations that may be a little bit ahead of them, because this issue of ethical and sustainable supply chains is not going to be solved by a small number of businesses working to become highly ethical. And in my view, it shouldn't be a differentiator. An ethical and sustainable supply chain should be the norm. It's not, but it should be. Therefore, it's only going to be sorted out to the degree in which we need it sorting out if everybody collaborates. And it's often what I say to a lot of the retailers that we work with and those that we're trying to work with is, they are not differentiated. A person doesn't choose between one brand or another on the basis of where they get their wood pulp from. But in order to create more sustainable supply chains with sustainable wood pulp, they need to collaborate together to work on that. So I think that there needs to be more of these. And there are some good forums out there where they can meet each other, collaborate, discuss these issues. And obviously, they can talk to us, and we'll happily point them in the right direction.
Well, thank you very much for your time. And for everyone watching, you can learn more in the description down below and also on our website. Peter, thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Pleasure.